Hi, and welcome to The Loneliness Industry, a philosophy podcast where we look at the real reasons behind loneliness and disconnection. If this is your first time here, my name is Jordan Rain, a philosophy graduate with a severe allergy to self-help gurus. Now, this week is part 2 of the interview with Sam Vaknin, one of the world's leading voices on narcissism. Now, in episode 11, the episode before the first part of our interview, I looked at Western spiritualism and the narcissism embedded in its values and beliefs. Now, in that episode, we looked at how this phenomena could be explained using Hegel's master-slave dialectic and Vaknin's idea of the covert and overt narcissistic cycle. And it occurred to me that only one of the theorists I used was dead. So I decided to ask Sam, who graciously agreed to be on the podcast. But before we begin with part 2, a heads up to those of you who are new here or who are tuning in exclusively because of our special guest. Now, you're likely used to seeing Sam on psychology podcasts where the format is different. Philosophy podcasts are about discussion rather than just asking short questions to trigger a monologue. Philosophy is about grappling with the ideas, so longer questions, interjections, and the questioning of foundational assumptions are par for the course in this format. And with that out of the way, this is the part of the interview where we move into psychology, Western spiritualism, and the social forces that foster narcissistic adaptations. Let's go. And in your work, you describe narcissism not as a fixed state, but as a kind of psychological cycle. So I'm especially interested in how the covert narcissist often longs to become overt, and how overt narcissists may collapse back into a covert state, especially after a failure to maintain power or control, which seems to me like this dialectic tension. So could you walk us through this internal cycle, how these two states relate, and what drives the shift between them?
I wish I could claim credit for this,
Okay.
but I can't. This is actually the mainstream nowadays. In the 80s, there was the misconception that there are two types of narcissists: overt narcissists and vulnerable, covert narcissists. But today we don't see it this way. Today the mainstream, the orthodoxy, is that all narcissists are sometimes overt and sometimes covert. And what induces the transformation, or transubstantiation if you wish, is what we call a state of collapse. A collapse is simply the inability to secure an uninterrupted flow of narcissistic supply. Narcissistic supply is a fancy phrase for attention. Attention could be negative, attention could be positive. Attention could be brought on by being prosocial, communal, moral, hypermoral, and so on. Attention could be brought on by being antisocial, criminal, but attention. It's the economy of attention. Again, there is a confluence here between social media, which is based on an attention economy, and narcissism, which is based on an attention economy.
Yes.
And so when the narcissist fails to obtain narcissistic supply, and I'm talking about a regular flow narcissistic supply, the narcissist collapses and transitions from an overt state to a covert state. Regrettably, there are relics of the previous period. So many people still call the overt narcissist grandiose, whereas all conditions of narcissism involve grandiosity. The covert narcissist is also grandiose.
Yeah, grandiose martyr, if I understand you.
Yes,
Yes.
His victimhood could be grandiose.
Huge victimhood.
Yeah. And similarly, we call the covert narcissist vulnerable, when actually all narcissists are vulnerable. The overt narcissist is vulnerable, which is why overt narcissists are very hypervigilant, very aggressive, very brittle, and fragile, because they're vulnerable. I mean, just look at Donald Trump. So these transitions are seamless. And the problem that we have in the profession is that scholars and academics study overt narcissists because they usually study student populations. So they study overt narcissists. They don't come across covert narcissists, whereas clinicians come across covert narcissists exclusively, because a narcissist would never attend therapy until he or she experienced a collapse, until he or she has transitioned into a covert state. So that's why there is this illusion that there are two types, and so on. Now, the covert narcissist, you're right that the wet dream of the covert narcissist is to be an overt narcissist, outgoing and extroverted and life of the party, the center of attention, a go-getter, defined, a bit reckless, and that's the wet dream of the covert narcissist, or the wet dream of the narcissist in the covert phase. And the wet dream of the overt narcissist is a never-ending flow of narcissistic supply at the same level, the same sort of regulated flow. Both of these are fantastic. The covert narcissist, or the narcissist in the covert phase, is highly compromised. The defenses of the narcissist are down. There's been failure, usually systemic failure. There's shame. There's a lot of shame. There's a sense of defeat, and so on. So this kind of person is unlikely to be a go-getter and a happy-go-lucky center of life of the party. So this is a fantasy. It's a fantasy defense. Similarly, the overt narcissist, when the overt narcissist imagines himself to be into the future, he says, I'm going to be as popular as I am today. I'm going to be as famous as I am today. I'm going to be as brilliant as I am today. In the case of the overt narcissist, there is the suspension of time. The overt narcissist is atemporal. It's like he doesn't recognize, for example, that he's going to get older. A somatic narcissist, a narcissist who derives narcissistic supply from his body, doesn't recognize the passage of time and the ravages of time. There's a suspension of time. And of course, time is inexorable, reality is harsh and pushes back. And so narcissists are cast into the outer darkness of the covert state and rebound. They rebound by constructing a new fantasy, a delusional fantasy, and by superimposing it on themselves and others around them. It's all a transition between types of fantasies, in effect.
Right, so to move to the shift from the micro to the macro here, so we often, on the loneliness industry, we're often exploring how power dynamics on the micro level, as we just talked about, are mirrored on the macro level. We've covered this a bit in what we've already talked about. But again, there seems to be this dialectical tension between vulnerability and grandiosity. So how does the shift in tactics after failed alertness play out on a societal scale? So in other words, do you see institutions or industries exhibiting similar moves, shifting from overt to covert strategies to retain power?
Yes, the core problem is the fantasy. When you live in fantasy, or when you adopt fantasy as the organizing principle and as the hermeneutic principle, the explanatory principle, at that moment you open yourself to attack, because it's a fantasy. By definition, it's counterfactual, it's concocted, it's not grounded, and it's not self-efficacious. Fantasy is never self-efficacious, never allows you to accomplish outcomes in reality, because it's divorced from reality. So the minute you adopt a fantasy, the minute you become a figment of a fantasy, participant in a fantasy, the instigator of a fantasy, you open yourself to attack. You're vulnerable. By definition, at that very second, you become vulnerable. This vulnerability is conscious, because you're confronted with messaging from reality. You're confronting with the signaling of reality on a constant basis. So when the narcissist constructs a fantasy, the narcissist at that moment becomes vulnerable to the messaging and signaling of reality. And the only way to restore a modicum of control and to restore the cognitive distortion of grandiosity is by denying reality or ignoring reality, and if this doesn't work, destroying reality, and I mean physically, literally destroying it. That applies to collectives. Everything in psychopathology is applicable to collectives, because collectives they create a hive mind. There is the cult mind, there is the mob mind, so it's a hive mind, it's a single mind. So you could have collectives, very often you do have collectives, which come up with a fantasy. Everyone migrates from reality to the fantasy, to the collective fantasy. Then reality pushes back. And the only outcome, or the only way to cope with this, is to deny reality. So that's the first thing they do. They deny reality. It never works, because reality is there, even after the denial. And then they destroy reality. That's why all narcissistic fantasies end in devastation, in a wasteland.
Are you referring to gaslighting on a societal level or on a collective level here, as in denying reality?
It's not gaslighting, although I know the term is being used rampantly. It's not gaslighting because
Okay.
the instigator of the fantasy usually believe in it.
Yeah.
So they cannot tell the difference between reality and fantasy. For you to gaslight someone, it needs to be premeditated, and you need to maintain.
Yeah. You're right. You're like, this is, I know the truth to be
I
able
know
to
the
tell you,
truth, but I'm
but
manipulating
to
it.
be able
Yeah.
to tell you that something's different from the truth, I have to know
Yes,
the truth. Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
It's Machiavellian. It's
Yeah.
manipulative.
Yeah.
Gaslighting is Machiavellian. So I know it's real, but I'm going to lie to you. I'm going to deceive you. I'm going to create an alternative reality for you because I want something from you, whatever
So
it
you're
is.
talking more about, you're talking more in terms of delusion. Am I understanding
Delusion.
correctly?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So
It's a
how does
delusional delusion.
rule by delusion? Please elaborate on that. I'd like to hear more in
So
terms of on the societal level here.
delusions,
Yeah.
religion is a prime
Mm.
example, of course. Delusions are anxiolytic. They reduce anxiety.
Yeah.
They're also antidepressant because, for example, they cater to the grandiosity of people. You're the best. You're the greatest. You're amazing. You're a person. You're a change agent. You're participating in the making of history. So there's a catering to grandiosity.
Yeah. Yes.
And so delusions fulfill multiple psychological needs and allow people to be a lot more functional, to create an internal locus of control, the belief that they're in charge of their own lives, and empower them. Delusions are empowering. You could even say that delusions are therapeutic. They're a form of therapy because they get rid of multiple mental health problems and so on, and they make you feel agentic. You develop a sense of agency, personal autonomy, strength, resilience, and so on and so forth.
This
There's a
comes back to them
single,
being adaptive, doesn't it?
sorry?
Does this come back to them being adaptive in some way, in that it
Uh,
helps you function within a certain system,
yes,
regardless of whether it's completely delusional? It helps you function within it.
all mental constructs
Yeah.
and all psychological processes are adaptive or they won't survive. Even pathological narcissism is adaptive. The problem with these adaptations, that they start off as positive adaptations, but then they become divorced from reality, and they hinder the capacity to act in and on reality in order to secure positive outcomes, a capacity known as self-efficacy. So the delusion starts off as a narrative. All delusions have an underlying narrative. The narrative is fantastic, aggrandizing, anxiolytic, antidepressant, and creates a sense of belonging and acceptance. So a cohesive collective. These narratives channel energy. They're hermeneutic. They're explanatory, interpretative. They make sense of reality and life. They provide you with a goal or goals, set of goals. They imbue your life with purpose and meaning. So they all generate meaning. And in this sense, delusions or delusional fantasies are therapeutic, absolutely therapeutic. The problem with delusional fantasies, the only problem as I see it, is that they have nothing to do with reality. The more divorced they are from reality, the bigger the daylight between the delusional fantasy and reality, the more therapeutic they are, the more potent they are, the more powerful they are. So actually, to benefit or to enjoy the benefits of a fantasy or delusional fantasy, it needs to be really crazy, really out there, really delusional. And religion, again, is the greatest example because it's really stupid nonsense from A to Z, But because the stupidity and inanity and nonsensical nature of religion is so radically extreme, it is a major success in the sense that it gives your life meaning, is therapeutic, makes you feel good, connect with other people, etc., etc. And some people say, why live in reality? I mean, reality does nothing for us. Fantasy is the thing. We need to live in fantasy because it works internally, externally. But
We're healthier for it. Yeah.
we feel much better in it. There's a sense of well-being, improvement in our lives. Religious people, talk to religious people, they will tell you, I used to be a drug addict, I used to be a junkie, I used to be a criminal, I found Jesus, and now my life is wonderful. I feel connected. I feel a sense of belonging. I feel happy. I have a family. I'm functional. I have a job. I've never been healthier physically. I've never been healthier mentally. It works. Yes, the benefits of delusional fantasies are all internal. The problem is it's unsustainable. It's never sustainable. Even individual fantasies are never sustainable.
It also raises questions about the pursuit of happiness, if this is how we achieve it. But that's a bit beyond the scope of what I want to talk about. Because while we're on this topic, would you mind addressing Western spiritualism specifically, and how the narcissistic cycle from grandiose to vulnerable and back again plays out in that?
I would appreciate a definition of Western spiritualism.
Yeah, well said. So I'm talking about things like manifesting. Everything has the idea that everything has a purpose, the idea that, whatever happens to you, your stubbed toe, your dead dog, these things are all lessons designed specifically for your betterment.
As you've just demonstrated.
Yeah, I've given away my siding. I'm not a fan, obviously.
Yeah, well, what you call Western spiritualism. First of all, it involves a mechanism. It involves a psychological process, which is considered pathological beyond the age of 2 years, and is known as I'm not kidding. And it's known as magical thinking.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely.
So magical thinking is when you conflate or confuse internal events and entities with external events and entities. And in this very narrow sense, magical thinking is pseudo-psychotic. It's a bit like psychosis.
Yes.
What we have in psychosis is the psychotic confuses internal voices, internal images with external ones. And similarly, by the way, the narcissist confuses external people with internal objects. So there is a confusion there. And this so-called spiritualism is magical thinking. And one form of magical thinking is action at a distance. Another form of magical thinking is a belief that wishing or wanting something somehow coalesces the forces and energies around you, or even physical objects around you, to conform to your wish or your dream.
Interruption. This is called a midstream advert. And it's where I get to say, I'm advertising myself here. This is where I get to say, your support would be much appreciated, as this podcast can only continue thanks to the assistance of people like you. So if you're watching on YouTube, do click join underneath the video. Signing up there means that you can support the podcast whilst getting exclusive videos that are coming up in the future, along with the chance to join our upcoming discussion group, along with helping the podcast happen. You can also support us on Patreon or via the donation button on www.thelonelinessindustry.net. And if none of those are possible, but you'd still like to see the podcast keep going, the usual subscribing, liking, and especially sharing any of these videos is still a great help. So thank you. And with that, on with the podcast.
So there are numerous forms of magical thinking. There is negative magical thinking, where you believe that if you wish someone ill, they're going to die. Or if you just think bad thoughts, they're going to somehow manifest or materialize. And this gives rise to obsessive compulsive features. People become obsessive compulsive in order to defend against bad thoughts, bad intrusive thoughts, and so on. Magical thinking has no redeeming features. It's not only a divorce from reality, not only obstructs your self-efficacy, it's even not therapeutic, is not the redeeming features of a delusional fantasy. It's just simply waving goodbye and migrating to La La Land. The second feature in this so-called spiritualism is aggrandizement or self-aggrandizement. It endows the conforming or the adherent. It endows the adherent with supernatural forces or forces. Everything around the adherent is intended to cater to the needs and wishes and dreams of the adherent. So law of attraction, The Secret, all this nonsense. But also personal relationship with God. God is taking a personal interest in your life, rearranging the events in your life, sending you secret signals that only you can decode and decipher. and so on and so forth. We have serious pathological conditions where the same applies. For example, consider erotomanic delusions. In erotomanic delusions, you convince yourself that a celebrity is in love with you. And then everything the celebrity does or says, every song they release, every appearance in a gala dinner or whatever, is actually a hidden secret signal between you and the celebrity. She is professing her love by singing this specific song on this specific day at this specific hour. We see a commonality between this and the belief, for example, that the universe is sending you messages, or that God is interfering in your life and signaling to you somehow, or so it's really sick. This is a miasma. This is really, really sick. And while when we discuss fantasy, I pointed to some redeeming features, there are none here. None. This is the exploitation of the mentally ill and the gullible and the feeble-minded by people who are unscrupulous and criminal. Absolutely criminal.
It's good to hear that from the horse's mouth, because psychologically speaking, yeah, the summary sounds like it's pathological. How do we get there, though? Because I see a lot in this. I unfortunately worked for someone called a Heilpraktiker in Germany, and was involved in the spiritual community through this Heilpraktiker. I'm not quite sure what the English word would be, maybe naturopath. And I saw a lot of these people who were very disempowered, very isolated, who essentially had been dealt quite a rough hand in life. And it seemed to be their way of feeling like they could re-empower themselves. But the manner in which they used it was really to sort of not have any sympathy for others. It's like, I'm on my mission, I have my purpose, and, they're quite happy to talk about, the bad things that happened to them, but they'll learn from it. Someone else has a bad experience they don't want to hear. And it seemed to me to be, this is what reminded me of covert narcissism. It's like the disempowered, but yet hoping to be special, and sometimes already quite self-obsessed, often because they're in trauma, offering them this faux solution to their disempowerment. And that was what I saw going on in that community, which made me very sad, because they were the very people who you would have thought had empathy, because they had quite terrible lives themselves. But no, it eradicated that and gave them a feeling of self-importance, which is why I wondered about the narcissistic cycle on that level.
Yes, I think you're very right to identify these people with covert narcissism. These are self-aggrandizing narratives. This is what is called in clinical psychology competitive victimhood. They are competing for victimhood, victimhood badges, and they need to take the people down a peg. They need to establish a hierarchy. Because they claim rights. When you declare your victimhood ostentatiously, when you weaponize it, when you communicate it, and so on, you're claiming rights. Victims have rights, and these rights impose obligations on other people, and so there is coercion involved, however subtle, and there is aggression involved. It's a form of externalized aggression, however subtle, however disguised. And of course, there's no empathy, because you can't afford to empathize with your competitor or your usurper, And it's self-aggrandizing, because whatever has happened to you has rendered you special, unique, and so on. And so you see this in, for example, victimhood movements such as the empath movement. I'm an empath. I'm a super empath.
The super empath thing.
I'm
yes,
a super galactic empath.
Problematic.
Supernova empath.
Yes.
So yes, I fully agree with you. Spirituality affords one both a sense of community, ironically, so you belong, you're accepted on the one hand, but you belong and you're accepted on your own terms. It's as if the message is, I crave belonging, I crave acceptance, I crave the embrace and the containing and the holding. I want to be with like-minded people or like-experienced people. I wish to resonate, and so on and so forth, but only on condition that they recognize my uniqueness, superiority, speciality, speciality, and only on condition that they grant me certain rights, if only the right to be heard.
That they then won't grant others. This was the burning point for me. It was like a group of people that all wanted to be recognised and seen. That part I don't have a problem with, because as you pointed out earlier, we need this. But then the refusal through this lack of empathy to see others. And I did find too that there's a lot of virtue signalling in this. It's,
Yeah.
you know, like I've been through so much, but I've got here, so I'm never going to complain. So you're not allowed to complain. And, you know,
I think we're reverting to the beginning of this conversation. There are
yeah, could well be.
There are 8.3 billion on this planet, people on this planet. It's very difficult to be seen. It's very difficult to garner attention. You need to escalate your behavior, or you need to stand out by virtue of belonging to an exclusive arcane group, people are desperate to be noticed, and they will do anything to be noticed. Some of them will become serial killers, some of them will become vegans, some of them become... It's not even narcissism. I think there I agree with you that there is desperation to be seen.
Yes. And you did point out to it is you're a psychologist. We know that this reflections is vital to the formation of self. There was another thing, this is actually not on my list, but it comes to mind. And I think it was Carl Gustav Jung who said, because it was the time where people were very interested in Eastern spiritualism, and Western spiritualism has kind of adopted it and said, you know, so ironically, destroy the ego, because it's exactly not what they do. However, Jung said, you actually have to have this healthy ego, and you talk a lot about healthy narcissism. You have to have this healthy ego before you can even consider destroying this ego, or you'll just fall apart. You'll just be this fractured mess. And in order to form this healthy ego that we need from the start, we need this mirroring. And you've said in one of your interviews that, you know, that this isn't going on sufficiently anymore, that we are to the point of a certain critical mass of having been atomized, where we're not getting those reflections in the places we would expect, but we've got all this technology to do it somewhere else. Yeah.
Ironically, I think these movements are destroying the ego. The ego in psychoanalysis, in both Freud's work and Jung's work, Jung emphasized processes such as introversion and narcissism as healthy processes that give rise to what he called the constellated ego. And Freud begged to differ. Freud thought that introversion and narcissism are actually deleterious processes that should somehow abate after age 2 or 3 years old, when you transition from narcissistic libido, narcissistic life force, to an object-oriented life force. So there's a big debate there. But both of them agreed that a constellated, integrated ego is the foundation of mental health, because ego functions are crucial. One of the most famous ego functions is reality testing. The ability to embed yourself, ground yourself in reality to good effect. And what these so-called spiritual whatever movements are doing, they're taking away your reality testing. They're impairing it. They're casting you into the outer darkness and oblivion of delusions and fantasies and magical thinking and so on. And by doing this, they are disabling your ego.
That's a very good point, Sam. It reminds me of something else you said too about intuition, which you explain in one of the videos in layman's terms as something to rely on in terms of when seeking a good relationship. And I find that, you know, very close to Western spiritualism is a lot of the self-help stuff. And a lot of how it seems to work to me is just saying, look, okay, you know, poor dear, you've done some work, but you don't know how wrecked you are. You know, you're actually more fucked up than you thought. And it's decoupling you from your intuition as well. That is also destroying the healthy ego. It's like, no, your intuition, you thought you're sort of halfway screwed, but no, you are just wrecked. You need my help. I'm going to position myself as the person that helps you, and the only person that can see accurately what's deeply wrong with you. And again, we see this, as you've mentioned, this destruction of the healthy ego. Like, I cannot rely on myself to know the extent of this problem. I can only rely on external figures. I have no idea now. And this leads to fragmentation as well, I would imagine.
This is the primal sin of psychology in general, that it started by studying pathologies.
And
not
only
us.
pathologies, not normality.
Well, there were
What
the
normality?
very beginning. You had
Yeah.
people like Wundt and others. They
Yeah.
studied healthy people.
They did. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then Freud took over, and not
Yeah.
Freud was an extension of the Paris school, and the French, German, French Austrian later French Austrian school confronted the German school. The German school, which was also the American school, the American German school, that has studied almost exclusively healthy people.
Interesting.
But then the
Ah,
French,
Wundt was didn't he have a lab in Leipzig? Was that him?
yes. And at the same time, you had Genet and Charcot in France, in Hotel Salpêtrière and other places, and they were studying only sick people, mentally ill people they decided were mentally ill.
Yes. Without the
Hysteria,
yardstick of normal. This is why it's interesting. Yeah.
and so, and then the French Austrian school took over, became dominant for 60 years almost, and that is it. It contaminated the field. It polluted the field. And we have no clue what is normal. We have no clue.
We really don't. We really don't.
We absolutely don't. And we tend to pathologize more and more additional behaviors.
Yes, Gabor Mate's talked about this, among others, that if everyone in the world sat down in front of a psychoanalyst and said, diagnose me, we'd all get some combination of things from the DSM.
Yeah, because
and I remember that they had suggested including introversion. And I just thought, oh my God, that's on my list of diagnoses. Introversion is pathology now. And I wonder too, it's just because the measuring stick seems to be how well adjusted are you to a usually sick society. And if Americans are writing things, we have the ICD here in Europe, but the DSM there, the extroverts take the cake every time. So the introverts will not be as well adjusted to that sick society, pathologize it. It's fascinating to me. Without a normal, we're just a rudderless ship here.
Yes, we don't have a benchmark.
No, we don't.
I'm not aware of any other discipline. I mean, psychology is a pseudoscience for reasons.
I agree with you. I'm in the middle of a psych degree, and it just, philosophically speaking, I'm like, there's no grounding for this stuff.
No, it's
I object all the time.
I mean, they camouflage it with statistics and but it's nonsense. I'm a physicist.
It's an interpretive art in some cases. We did this experiment. We deprived everyone of cabbages. They behaved in this manner, and we've interpreted it as such. And you could have interpreted it a number of other ways.
It's literature.
It's
simply literature.
Yeah.
Freud was a great author.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Great.
I think Jung as well.
And Jung as well.
Yeah.
Dostoevsky was the best psychologist ever. Even in a pseudoscience, you need some rigorousness.
Yes, you do.
And you don't have it. How can you have this? Yeah. If you don't have the baseline, if you don't agree on what's healthy and what's normal, and how could you develop even a pseudoscience?
This is the thing. And the next episode I'm doing is on the fact that so many of these things, and speaking of Freud, it is non-falsifiable when I say, you're just doing this because of a subconscious drive to do whatever. And me as the analyst here and you as the client, I'm sitting on my high horse telling you you're doing this because of your subconscious. And you can scream at me until you're blue in the face saying, no, that is no. I love my dog. I didn't deliberately kill my dog because of my subconscious. I genuinely love my dog. And I go, nah, subconscious hatred of your dog. That is not falsifiable. That is a pseudoscience.
That applies to all psychology. I mean, Freud is Freud is considered outside the pale. It's beyond the pale. Beyond the pale. Yeah. But even the most modern psychology it's not falsifiable and it's not replicable. 80% of psychological studies cannot be replicated. That's a replication crisis. And it's not falsifiable. It's not falsifiable because your raw material is mutable, changes all the time. If I were to study you right now, imagine that I were to study you, and the study would be rigorous. It's double blind, and it's clinically randomized, and I'm gonna create the most amazing, methodologically rigorous study of a group of people. Okay, 100 of you, group of people. I can never repeat this experiment because you are changing. You're even changing as a result of the experiment.
Yes, absolutely. Good
If
point, yeah.
if I study the sun, it is not impacted by the fact that I'm studying
No,
it.
it's not.
You are. And then I conduct the experiment today, and I invite you tomorrow to repeat the experiment. Are you the same person tomorrow? Something happened to you.
My
You
dog
broke up
died.
with your lover. I don't know
Yeah,
what, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
It's stupid.
Yeah.
It's not the same raw material. So
Yes. It
this
frustrates me deeply as well.
such
It really
methodological
does.
nonsense.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm studying it in Germany too, Sam. It's even worse, as you know. I do want to get on to Christopher Lasch because I should have guessed that you had read him as well, but I didn't realize that until I listened to another one of your videos yesterday. So, yes, you've also read Christopher Lasch, who argued that society itself has become narcissistic, and this is in the 70s. And while he doesn't frame it as a clinical thing, he suggests that narcissism operates both in social structures and in the individual shaped by them. So, what are your thoughts on that and on the way narcissistic values are transmitted between systems and psyches? We've kind of touched on this, but if you could do it directly, that would be great.
Christopher Lasch was one of a member in a very big group, many of whom preceded him by 1 or 2 decades. I would just mention, for example, Eric Fromm or Althusser himself, and so on. So he was well embedded in a general view of society, which claimed that society is being pathologized. It's being pathologized by transitioning from substance to performance, that is Gidebo. It's being pathologized by transitioning from agency to manipulativeness, that is Althusser, and it's being pathologized by transitioning from empathy-based society and institutions to selfishness, if you wish, or egotism, which is Lasch. But the core argument was that now individual pathologies are induced by collective pathologies rather than the other way around. That was the core argument, which was a major revolution.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Up until the 60s, the belief was that individuals are the seat of pathologies, and if we have a sufficient number of pathologized individuals, they're likely to form a pathological collective. Whereas these authors, and I can mention many more, like Foucault, Michel Foucault, and
oh yes, I'm a big fan.
many others.
Yeah, yeah.
These scholars claim that we got it all wrong. It is anomic. Durkheim, yes, Emil Durkheim, anomy. It is anomic, pathologized, sick, dysfunctional, delusional societies that induce pathologies in their individual members. In other words, all mental illness is collective and societal and cultural, never individual.
This is exactly the view of a lot of sociology and philosophy, that the individual is a symptom of society. I do actually remember when if you're from the Jurassic epoch, I'm Cretaceous. It's a long time ago. But reading that, the book was called The Individual as the Symptom of Society, or something very similar to that. And that just sort of summed up the entire perspective in one cover of a book. Whereas psychology just focuses on the problem is in you. You know, it's irrelevant that your dad beat you with a stick. It is irrelevant that soldiers shot everyone in your family. You are the problem, which just strikes me as phenomenally short-sighted.
Yeah. It's not only short-sighted, it induces pathological dynamics.
Yeah.
If you keep telling someone that he is or she is the seat of the problem, you induce guilt. You induce shame.
Yes.
Shame.
Yeah.
This creates bad dynamics, actually. But I think both parties are getting it wrong to some extent. I think what happens is we are conflating and confusing medical conditions, which have psychological outcomes, with pure psychological conditions, which have no bodily involvement. And I think the DSM should be purged. If we take the DSM, should be purged.
With you completely.
For example, schizophrenia should never be in the DSM. It's a medical condition. End of story. It's a brain abnormality, biochemical mainly. It should be in a medical textbook, not in the DSM. Bipolar disorder should never be in the DSM. It's a biochemical condition, pure and simple, etc., etc. If we were to remove these, the conditions left are mostly mostly induced by society.
I would say too, I think that thinking of things like depression, which to me is a logical reaction. That's not a pathology either. It's a logical reaction to a terrible state of affairs.
Yes. They are mostly these conditions. So if we were to remove schizophrenia and bipolar and so on, we're going to be left with a much reduced DSM. And all the conditions in the DSM, which have no medical background, biochemical background, brain abnormality background, neurodevelopmental background, and so on, autism should be removed completely from the DSM. If you do this, what's left is relational, societal, cultural. Take, for example, narcissism. Narcissism is 100% relational, and narcissism is also has pronounced cultural and societal dimensions, manifest differently in different societies and cultures and so on and so forth. If you were to isolate a narcissist on an island with not a single individual there, most of the manifestations of narcissism would vanish. The person would no longer be diagnosed as a narcissist, cannot be diagnosed as a narcissist. Psychopathy, of course, is a societal construct, is of course not a mental illness. I mean, absolutely not a mental illness. So, and I think this is the source of the confusion. That's the source of the debate between these people, because they refer to pure medical conditions as psychological conditions or psychopathological conditions, and then they say, you see, it's individual.
All about the individual, yes.
It's individual, it's not societal. But they are not psychological conditions.
Yeah. And if all that was left with the societally induced issues, then we'd be only left with a map of what we've done wrong as a culture. Yeah.
Yes, there is, of course. Don't forget that psychology has emerged from highly conformist, conservative, and traditional societies.
Trust me, I don't forget that. I live in Germany.
Yes.
Actually, that does bring me to my next question, which I'm not entirely sure if I will include this question. You've spoken about people becoming robotic in the past, right? And about how technology is being developed to, give the robotic what they believe they need. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But anyway, I'm living in Germany, and to be honest, it does. I've lived here for 10 years in total, but I moved back here 5 years ago after Poland. It feels like the end state of this, Weltanschauung, the idea, the inner world, the inner world and feelings are just devalued, and feelings themselves are seen as weak and just somehow inferior. And it seems that there's a systematic trying to rid oneself and other people of them, right? So that you become the ideal seems to be a purely functional kind of individual, and that's applauded. If you never flip out, you never get upset, you do your thing. Empathy also seems dead here, and compliance it's not just about the power structures telling you to follow the rules. I'll get shouted at by random strangers telling me what I have to do and can't do with my dog. So, is this the trajectory of where Western values are going to lead us if things don't shift?
Whenever people, first of all, Germany may be an outlier.
Well, I think it is. I don't think it's typical of all Western society. That's why I think it's the end state, which is, it's debatable. This is all anecdotal evidence that I have here. Yeah.
I think people are willing to trade personal autonomy, even identity, for safety. I think the overriding concern is safety.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when the world is uncertain, when there is a lot of indeterminacy and unpredictability, and people react to this with anxiety. Anxiety is intolerable. And one way to reduce anxiety very efficaciously is by suspending your agency, by transmitting your agency to external agents. So you could transmit it to the state, you can transmit it to a charismatic leader who is authoritarian, you can transmit it to a dictator, but the minute you offload, the minute you get rid of the need to make decisions, of the need to make choices, that's a huge relief. It's anxiolytic. But at that point, of course, you become less than human. And this is also unbearable, intolerable, unsustainable. So here, the state or the collective or the charismatic leader or so, they introduce a compensatory fantasy. So actually, delusional fantasies that we kept mentioning throughout this conversation have to do, they are a compensatory mechanism. They have to do with a reduction in humanity. The less human you are, in the sense that the less personal autonomy you have, the fewer decisions you make, fewer choices you make, the fewer awareness, the lower your awareness of other people or your willingness to incorporate them into your considerations. In other words, less empathic you are, and so on and so forth. Then you feel dehumanized, you feel objectified, you feel reduced, and there's a need to compensate for this. So the compensation is a collective delusional fantasy. Let me put it this way. I come to you and I say, listen, the world is very dangerous, very hostile, very risky, indeterminate, uncertain, unpredictable, nothing you can survive. So I'm offering you a deal. You let go of 50% of your humanity, in the sense that I will render you a robot. I will convert you into an automaton. I will provide you with a list of instructions and directions and algorithms. I will render you into an algorithmic manifestation, okay? So that you don't feel bad about it. I'm going to integrate you in a collective. This collective is a shared fantasy, it's a delusional fantasy, but this collective will compensate you for the missing parts. Whereas you will not be able to decide any longer, the collective will. Whereas you will lack empathy, the collective will simulate empathy. Whereas you will not be agentic, the collective will be agentic. You will not have your personal autonomy, you will regain it through the collective. And your sense of uniqueness and specialness will be derived from the collective. The collective is a fantasy. It's a delusional fantasy. It's not a real collective. Very often, it's not a real collective.
I'm wondering too, going back to Occam's razor, because you mentioned fear. And I mean, I do really think that fear seems to be a driving force here. I mean, you know, they've had a horrible experience of, you know, what will happen when things go wrong. So fear driving this conformity to, I think rules seem to be seen as the solution. So fear is quelled by going, if I follow this recipe, nothing will happen, which is, of course, a fantasy. But I don't think the fantasy is necessarily about collective, because, like I said, this is anecdotal evidence. But from what I'm seeing, it's more of what you referred to earlier, of people preferring really not to have anything to do with other people. It's just like, I'm scared, I know nothing will happen, which is the fantasy. It's not true. If I follow these rules and just do as I'm told.
Where did you get the rules from? Who gave you the rules?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, who gave you these rules?
The institutions, the lawmakers. Yes. Yeah.
This is the compensatory.
Are you saying, the institutions and the
collectives
are the collective? Aha, okay, I'm following. Now I'm following.
The nation state. The nation state is a fantasy. You realize it?
Yeah. Oh God, yes.
There's no such thing. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's a complete fantasy. These are all fantasies.
Yes.
Counterfactual, completely delusional, and yet they're prescriptive.
Yes, they are.
Prescriptive. They afford you with a prescription. At the same time, they're also proscriptive. They prescribe certain things.
Yes.
So they narrow, they constrict your life, and this endows you with a sense of safety, a sense of stability.
Here's the thing, though, Sam, because I think in most of the cases you're right, and that's what I see playing out here. But of course, you know, I've made broad sweeping statements about German culture, and that is not every person, not everyone yells at me about my dog. There are some good people here. So it can't be that everyone reacts the same to going, okay, if I follow the recipe, I can quell my fear. There'll be some people that go, yeah, okay, I'm promised that I can quell my fear by following the recipe, but either I don't believe that, or I'm just not prepared to give up my autonomy to that extent, or my creativity, or all of the other things that costs you.
Of course.
Yeah. So I think there are different reactions. And then we come back to the beginning too, that some of us will react to this isolation, not necessarily joy, but with despair or some other thing, because I think we do react differently to the prices that we have to pay for participating in these fantasies.
These are the rebels, and it's a statistical question. Normalcy, what is normal is defined by numbers. It seems that people are choosing aloneness or loneliness that's substantiated by numbers. Similarly, most people are conformists or choose to belong to collectives that is substantiated by numbers. People are more and more prone to shared fantasies. 70 million people voted for Donald Trump. So this seems to be, and equally you have Orban in Hungary, Netanyahu in Israel, Modi in India, Erdogan in Turkey, and so on. But I agree with you.
But again, not all of them.
Not all of them. No, absolutely. You have rebels.
Too few to have an effect. But
you have rebels, and dissidents, and artists. But what we're doing, we're pathologizing them. The collective is pathologizing them.
Yes, we're pathologizing the outliers, and this is why the loneliness industry. I'm pretty sure that a lot of the listeners, we're all outliers. It's people like me. Not all of them are necessarily artists or philosophers, but those that react differently. Those that would not just follow the recipe to get rid of their fear. Those that say, do you know what, this atomization is actually painful, not joyful, and I would rather talk to someone than a computer. I've just structurally been deprived of the means of doing that.
Yes. So, for example, if you're defined, if you defy the rules, you're a psychopath. If you're a child,
it makes me a psychopath.
If you're a child at school and you disagree with the headmistress, there is a diagnosis for this. Would you believe it? Oppositional defiant disorder. That's a child who keeps fighting with his teachers and headmistress.
Yeah.
That's how it's defined.
Yes, it is. And it doesn't say, footnote, as long as the teacher isn't bashing said child or haranguing said child.
It's unqualified. If you dare oppose, you have oppositional defiant disorder.
Yes.
You know what? If you're a bit ambitious and consequently you're self-centered and you're a bit abrasive and a bit, exploitative maybe, and so you're a narcissist. We're pathologizing everything. Internet addiction is pathologized. Nicotine addiction is in the... Listen, I'll give you a number. The first edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual in 1952 was comprised of 100 pages. The text revision of the 5th edition of the same book is 1,100 pages.
Yes.
11 times. Have we grown 11 times more crazy?
Yeah.
Or are we pathologizing every conceivable behavior?
I actually talked about this in another episode too, how in terms of connection, and you've talked about, the fact that the atomization is deliberate. This is not an error in the system, it is the system. And that you actually mentioned the lone wolf, which I mention a lot too, how it's applauded, it's held up as the ideal. The word codependency seems to me is what, Foucault would say, how we pathologize the opposite of the thing that society wants us to follow. So we want everyone to be an atomized lone wolf. Therefore, anyone who's deeply, intimately involved with someone will be called codependent. Yeah. We need new words to make sure everyone understands. If you don't follow the values that we hold dear, you're sick in the head. You're not just a rebel. There's something wrong with you.
There's a good argument to be made that with the exception of the aforementioned medical conditions, psychotic disorders, autism spectrum disorders, bipolar disorder, with the exception of these, where we can trace a genealogy or a provenance in the brain and in genes and in the body, except these conditions, we should burn the rest of the DSM. An excellent argument to be made for this is the rest of the DSM is about social control. It's a societal thing, construct, not real science.
Yeah, it's the manual of get in line. It's the manual of behave how we want you to behave.
Yeah, homogenization.
Absolutely, yes. There was one video where you actually opened with this. It's like, it was, I'm totally paraphrasing it, we'll get it wrong, something along the lines of, too much self-help and introspection actually can be counterproductive. Because I think this is the driving engine of YouTube as well. So many people will write too. It's like, what do you expect? What should we do about this? And it's like, well, be you. Try being you, because the message is always under no circumstances be yourself. Try being yourself. Just do that, because that's, you can. If you haven't been too trained out of it and, undermined in terms of your faith in yourself, try being
But
yourself.
psychology and psychotherapy are meant to keep you atomized.
Absolutely. And in doubt and in shame.
Yes, but you see, in the past, if
Yeah.
you were a bit distressed or unhappy a bit or something, you would talk to your best friend.
Yeah. It's been
You would talk to
outsourced.
family. Talk to
Friendship
family.
has been outsourced. Yeah.
Yes. So now, you know that there was a study about the number of friends. So in 1980, a typical American individual had 10 point something close friends, like best friend. Best friend. The question was phrased this way. If you had a shameful secret that was gnawing at you, and how many people would you feel comfortable to share it with? And they said 10 people in 1980.
Okay, that's a
the
fairly
same
robust
study,
definition.
same study has been repeated in 2020,
and
the result was fewer than one.
Wow.
Fewer than one person. So,
wow.
And who took this? Who took the place of this vacuum? Nature doesn't tolerate a vacuum. Yeah? Who took the place of this vacuum?
Therapists.
Therapists.
Yes, I do often discuss my deep-seated issues with CBT, whose underlying assumption is the context that you're in is fine, but your reaction to it's wrong. Right. So, and you deal obviously a lot with people who are in situations of domestic abuse. Telling someone to react differently to that is not remotely helpful. And I do think that therapy, in the wrong hands, I do know I've got friends who are therapists and they're very, very good, but there's certainly a wealth of bad therapists out there whose function seems to be bring you in line to what's expected. And I think it's no accident that if you have issues in the workplace and the workplace pays for the therapy, it's CBT. It's adapt your behavior to fit the environment and not the other way around.
CBT is a programming language.
Of course, yeah. It's behavioral adaptation to reprogram you so that you fit again.
You identify automatic negative thoughts and you rewrite the code.
yeah. Such as my boss is a dick. It's like, no, he's not. He's great. It's like, no, he might factually be a dick, but that's not entered into.
Oh, I'm a dick.
Yeah, I can be a dick too. I think we can all be dicks.
No, you're not. This is a negative automatic thought.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute, I'm a dick. No. So, and it harks back to my original argument when I was trying to communicate to you that it's systemic and systematic. These are not just overt text that is deceptive and baiting, or the whole system is constructed. And this has to do with capitalism, but that's a topic for another.
No, absolutely. The whole podcast is deliberately going against every capitalist value and building on that. Yes, I think we agree on a lot of certainly the outcomes and the state of affairs and the deliberateness of it. I guess it's just the part we would disagree is about whether we're choosing this out of joy, and that was just the main beef I had. It's like, I don't think the choices are as Sartrean as one thinks, and I don't think that necessarily any of the choices have joy in them. Because we can't escape the atomization of the system. It is inherently atomized. It's not that we can run to some collective, Western spiritualism, but we know what happens there. There's a choice between follow the fear rule book to avoid fear, or go and hang out with the people with crystals in every orifice. That's not much of a choice, and I don't find either of them joyful.
I understand. We have a theory in psychology about attitudes and motivations, and we derive attitudes and motivations from behavior. Yeah. And we say if someone keeps doing the same thing for decades, then there must be what we call cathexis. There must be positive emotional investment in this. So there's some kind of
does something for
attachment or bonding with the activity.
Yes.
That
effect can be the numbing of pain, as we know from addiction stories. It might be the pain level is just whatever the plus is. Yeah.
Numbing of pain. Yeah. Numbing of pain is good for you. It's like you like it. People like numbing of pain. Yeah. So even that would be a positive positive emotion, positive reaction.
Yes, people like cocaine.
Okay. I think we've exhausted our viewers.
I think we. Yes. Thank you so much, Sam, for your time. It has been absolutely wonderful talking to you. And thank you for elaborating on a lot of the theories I've been fascinated with for a
Thank you.
long
It's
time.
been
It's
a
great to
pleasure.
get this depth.
We should
I-
do it. We should do it again
I,
sometime.
I would love to. I would love
Maybe
to.
next time we could focus on capitalism and
Yes,
how
let's do
capitalism
that.
has led to all this.
Yes. I don't know if you've checked out the podcast. It starts with, I just go through the values, the core values of capitalism, one after the other systematically, and debunk them with philosophy and a bit of psychology. So,
Yeah, but capitalism,
is the root of all
automation
evil.
and loneliness are the inevitable outcomes of capitalism.
Well, that's my whole
They're
shtick.
inexorable.
That is my whole
Inexorable.
shtick. Why I had to do all of those first to go, this is why we're lonely.
Yeah,
You know,
I
yes,
agree.
yes.
With this,
Yeah. No,
we're
it'd be
in full agreement.
fantastic to talk to you again, Sam. That was, seriously, you made my day. Yeah.
Thank
You
you.
made my day. Now, I hope you guys found that at least interesting, if not enjoyable, or both. I intend to host more interviews around the topic of loneliness, and I'm currently digging out philosophers, academics, and professionals in the field to bring to you. Now, if there's anyone in particular that you feel might be a fit, keeping in mind that I'm a very small channel, do let me know in the comments. Next week will be the final episode in the series on narcissism and society, and we look at how institutions themselves use the double bind, blame shifting, and other tactics to keep you lonely. Now, if you are new here and this was your first time watching and you want to know where to go next, I'm linking 2 playlists at the end of this video. The one on the bottom is going to be the start of the Narcissism in Society playlist, and the one on the top is going to be the start of the Western Capitalist Values series. It really is the foundation of this whole podcast, where we show how each of the Western capitalist values leads ultimately to our isolation. So if that interests you, links are down the bottom. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.